Hello, sixth graders. This is your first video in the series of mixtures and solutions. And the question you're going to study today is, what is a property? And then you're going to compare the properties of three substances and do an experiment to see if you can separate those substances from water. So first of all, what is a property? The properties of a substance are the qualities or traits belonging to that substance that make the substance unique. For example, what are the properties of this apple? Think of sight, touch, smell, and also think of what you can do with this apple. So you could say that the property of this apple is that it's red, it's shiny, it smells like an apple, and also it can provide nutrition to your body. But now, as you can see, there's been a physical change to the apple. What can I say? I got hungry. So, how have the properties of this apple changed? Can it provide nutrition to your body any longer? Well, maybe a little, but not as much. Now it's more white than red. And also it probably doesn't feel as smooth and shiny anymore. It feels like a wet apple core. So, did this make you think of the idea of properties any differently? It should have. I hope now what you're saying to yourself is that the properties of a substance can change over time. Or they can change through physical change, and as you'll learn later on, through chemical changes. So, one thing we're going to be working with in this activity are diatomaceous earth pieces. And diatoms are microscopic plant-like organisms that leave tiny shells behind them in the ocean when they die. And the shells look like powder in our eyes, but under a powerful microscope they look like these beautiful little pieces of crystal or jewelry. So one of the substances that we are going to be working with is called diatomaceous earth, and that is all of these tiny shells mixed together and settled down into the bottom of the ocean, which begins to look like a powdery sand substance. So you have a sheet that looks like this, separating mixtures, and you're going to go through each of these three parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. And part 1 focuses on studying the properties of these three substances: gravel, small rocks, which I'm sure you're familiar with, powder, which I just introduced to you as diatomaceous earth, or the collection of shells of tiny diatoms, and salt, in science terminology known as sodium chloride. So when you're doing this activity, make sure to remember your safety rules. None of these materials are harmful to you, but I would suggest that you not eat any of them. The salt isn't the salt on your table and has been stored with other chemicals, so I wouldn't want you to ingest any of the salt or powder or gravel. And I would suggest that you not inhale the powder or smell any of these substances, because inhaling the powder can cause some irritation to your lungs. Secondly, when you get to the part of your page that says Other, and you've already written about the color, the texture, which is the feeling, or how the particle feels, the shape, which you can see under the magnifying glass, which I've shown you how to use, and you've written about particle size, then you can draw a picture here in Other of each of these three particles. For particle size, which might be difficult as well, the particle is just each piece, and it may be too small to measure. So you could just use the word smallest, middle-sized, or biggest to compare the particle sizes of those three substances. And then in part 2, you're going to add 1 full syringe of water to each cup. You're going to stir and observe. Please don't write nothing happened or nothing in any of these spaces. Take your time and describe exactly what happened when you added water to the cup. It might take a little while for some of the things to happen which are going to happen. Take your time. And then for part 3, what you're going to do is, after having added water to the cups, you've created mixtures of water and gravel, water and powder, and water and salt. And your goal is to try to separate the mixtures using the screen, first of all, which is pictured here, and the filter paper, which is just a coffee filter, which I've shown you, and the powder and the water you're going to try to separate with the screen and with the filter paper. You're also going to try to separate the gravel and the water, and you're going to try to separate the salt and the water, and record your results. Record whether you were successful in separating those mixtures or not. Good luck. Make sure you remember that the goal for today is to recognize properties of substances and to experiment with separating mixtures. Good luck.